So first of all, after this lecture we heard before, it's quite difficult to start, no?
No, because last image was perfect to do the translation.
And maybe you, if you, especially in the last 3 points, one was ownership of the ground, which is normally a material we never discussed in terms of architecture. It's not part of our education. It's about should we live differently together. It's also not part of our architectural education. So in today's newspaper, to start with that, there is Trump will make migrants leave a number of between 2 to 6 millions to leave America. That was his last night's speech. And the wall between USA and Mexico will be built in case he's becoming president, and Mexico has to pay for it. So, but what is he talking about? He's talking about architecture, because any fencing is the primary element of architecture. A wall with controlled doors, transition zones, that's architecture. So he was basically talking yesterday and the day before exactly about architecture and migration. So if you would ask me now, what's your definition on architecture? One definition I like a lot is that architecture is the ordering of social relations through building. And then it becomes completely clear that any fence, any door is ordering social relations. And I'm really happy that I didn't end up in Luxembourg, but in Schengen today. Because as you can see here on the logo, Schengen is not only the city, but that's a personal point now. I think all borders are completely temporary. It's not possible to stabilize any borders, whether it was between East or West Germany, North or South Korea, Mexico was or also, which is a less invisible border, but very effective and became visible in the last year, the Schengen border. So I don't believe in the existence of Schengen within 20 years. It's impossible. Also in architectural terms. I will start with some architecture very quickly, maybe 10 minutes, to tell you why we, in the debate we are following, contributed some terms maybe, or some thoughts that can be helpful to think about also a term like migration, which is not my topic at all. So this is the Brunnenstraße amendment, just to remind it, and for those who didn't saw it, it was 10 years ago, a cheap ground, there was an existing basement, so we could buy it by the price in that time in Berlin that was really cheap, minus the removal cost of the basement. We just moved the basement and tried to implement a system which was maybe going back to, we could frame it back to Unger's, he named it Bindung, so ties to the existing what's around. So we had to cut it away, that there's still light in the courtyard, which was a legal act in when we bought it. And then, okay, we will really refer as far as we can to the conditions around, but the conditions around are not only the spatial ones, like the height of the neighboring floors. It's like how far can a staircase extend? Can it be extending without having a case as a staircase? How long is a ladder for a fire brigade to have a second case window? Though we are entering kind of legal, that's a legal framework that's forming this piece of, let's call it architecture. And we have much more ties. It's also the social, let's say, Bindungen, the social ties around. In that time there were a lot of artist studios and they have been kicked out, and galleries. So how do you deal with as an architect if the galleries have to move out in the backyard 20 meters away? So the only way is you have to provide space so cheap that they can afford it. No? Or you have to subsidize it, which was not my possibility. So we just decided if this is also one of the conditions in architecture, it's very simple. If you build for half price, you can rent it for half price. And you can make your own friends out of the building you're constructing. So one is standards down. That's maybe something we can keep on, standards down. Because all these regulations that protect us from, I don't know, under the name of sustainability, lead to something that social housing becomes more and more impossible, especially in Germany where we don't subsidize it any longer. So this kind of shelter with tents and whatever, it's all not longer possible because the insulation is missing or whatever. So all these ideas under the name of sustainability, so for a better world as well, not longer possible. The second point is we didn't call it either living all work, because we are quite sure that all our lives might have changed already, that we work at home and we whatever kinds of combinations we can find. So never define, in our case, never define the use. So we always call it atelier, but that's just a trick, and it's disappearing, this kind of trick. Because then you can also like have less, you could start following less regulations, but that's stopping. That means we just provide a slab, a stacked slab, and everybody can build on in that building, and they do. It's rather rough, but you can use it. There is a heating, and it's a little bit loud. If you see this facade for it, that's polycarbonate, that's cheap. So you hear the noise from the sea, you are living in the city, and if you want to add some comfort, you add it. You add a piece of glass behind or whatever. Second example. So from the first one we have standards, non-determination of use. The second, we were always, I don't know who has worked in an office already, a few students, and you always had to patch this kind of insulation, or 20 centimeters of insulation to the outside, then you knock at the building, and then it cools. But we make it look like something we had 150 years ago, and so something is going wrong, I think, in that. So we said, okay, can we do a case study with this very nice project, which is a very nice house. It's very nice looking, maybe not in the beginning, which was made by Mozambique and Vietnamese guys, a training camp in East Germany, and it was used as, yeah, to produce women's underwear. The East German one, so they called it Liebestöter. And the house, and there's a neighboring building, was called the Schlüpperbude. So you can translate it to it. So, and those apprentices, everybody had to make one window. Therefore, there's a lot of windows, and it was very cheap again, and it's at a lake, and it's close to Berlin, and it has an asbestos fiber roof, so that we can't live with the asbestos fiber, no? So, for sure that will disappear. And the same story, we bought the ground, minus the removal costs of the building, and we could have built the one floor, one family house with 100 square meters. So that was the price. So if you reduce it by the removal cost, it's nearly nothing. Yeah. So on the right-hand side, you see a part of the cultural barrack. Any East German production company had a cultural barrack. At least, culture and production was thought together, which is something we can do. So just show quickly how we deal with it was 10 students, mainly women, tough workers. We just used the old one because we were not allowed to keep it. No, we were allowed to keep it, but we were not allowed to remove it and to build a new one. So there is one paragraph, if 3 walls are standing, it has a right to stay. So we had half one, half another half, so we had 3 walls. But if you would have touched one, never build again there. So we made a cast. The whole project is called Rachel by Rachel Whitewood, because that's her technique, let's say, we used. So cleaning, how we start, no basement, then this kind of form work, you pour concrete in. It's a very intelligent way. It's like, you know, this Gleitschalung, this form work you can use several times, and you don't have to buy so much wood. And you go on, and you go on, and then you make a concrete roof as well, because they wanted to do it as well as a concrete roof, which was the first test site whether this is functioning. And it became a very interesting building, let's say, a very small one. And then the authorities came and said, well, but you did something new. And we said, no, this is the proof that the existing 3 walls have been there in any moment. And only after we had reinforced them, they somehow disappeared. But the image itself is a proof legal-wise. So, for this one we thought how to deal with this energy lawmaking, and for sure if we now start to use it, the walls maybe thick like that, don't fulfill at all the requirements of the energy regulations. So we thought maybe we can just use a curtain like this, no, completely transparent. And if it's getting cold, we put something warm in the middle, it's a sauna. So also hedonism can be part of experiments. So we put a curtain around, we heat the sauna, and then it should be warmer inside the curtain than outside the curtain, and maybe in winter time we have less space. And So that's the new block we put in. It's a sauna, a kitchen, a stair to the roof, and a fireplace. Then we were testing how to get better view to the lakeside, and so here's already the concrete roofs on top. Then we made a party, people came, we had some tools, and I go back. So this new concrete slab, concrete roof, has a little edge, and this edge is a support structure that you could throw out. It all walls, 2/3 of the wall, not longer than 5 meters, and you have to keep the corners to keep it stable. So this is the kind of structural engineering that is not like we have to have something here because the window is exactly here. It's more like enabling thinking. It's enabling to throw out wherever you want. No, just to kick out. You can also do it at home maybe, like if you have a bad view. So this was the end of the day. It's looking a little bit like a pumpkin for Halloween, but that's what happened. And it's a really, I think it's a really convincing way to the fireplace, there's a curtain, and we had one cold winter like 2 years ago, and we had 14 days, maybe 20, where we had to use the curtain. Then if you put energy in like permanently, you have a difference, a delta of 8 degrees. So we had like 20 degrees inside and 12 degrees where you have the eating table. So still you can walk through, and it was following the energy regulations. We made just like a kind of calculation using the kind of fact that the air is not floating completely, but it's like only somehow blocked by the curtain, and it was functioning. Then 4 months later, there is a new regulation implemented in this law of energy thing that from now on you're only allowed for the calculation models to use, for the calculation models, materials thicker than 2 centimeters. You see, that's the kind of, and for sure we call it anti-villa because it's maybe not the same quality of services and energy and whatever, but it's as huge as, so here we can take, don't follow the rules, and even like hedonism and like villa-esque concepts can be made in a kind of completely different range of money. And we will come back to this money part. And for sure there's great energy in because we keep the building, and so it went to several exhibitions, which is important to say that it's like becoming part of a kind of circulation of ideas. And then we were really astonished also to make it the front cover of T magazine, the New York Times magazine, that even there's something in the air that some things might go wrong. No? This kind of decoration of whatever. This I don't tell you nothing about, that's the next project. But it's important for one point. This is the biggest trading market in the hand completely of Vietnamese guest workers of East Germany. It's a Dongshan Center in Berlin. It's a very nice area. You can buy everything, you can eat very good Vietnamese, you can have your nails polished, you can have everything. It's all not, but the only thing they are legally allowed is to trade in huge quantities. So it wouldn't be allowed to buy there as a normal customer. Only the workers would be allowed to eat in those canteens. But the use is something completely different, and then we will come back to this difference between what law is providing you as a possibility and what reality is made out of that. Very nice. We got these towers now. This will be the new office, and they're really great. And so we published one image. We tried to get a permission to have a prototype production there when it came to all the discussions about how to provide shelter for refugees. And now all these containers and prefab companies provide thousands, 10,000, 100,000 of units of stupid architecture. And we thought maybe that could be different. And one of our suggestions, I just don't explain it too well. Maybe one scheme. So that scheme you see on the left-hand side, it's just a maisonette type. Maisonette, clear? On both, one is east-west, one is north-south, so you have a maisonette with all 4 directions. So if there's sun, you have sun. If you want to work on one floor, you will work on one floor. You can live on the other. You can even like use it with many people and make very small units, rooms out of it. And we provided that, and that we can build it for 850 euro, including fee of the architects, excluding the ground, including VAT. If there is at least 2,000 units, so that was the calculation. We provided that for social housing before, and then even like €6.50 rent would make it affordable to finance the whole project. And then we found out it's more difficult than we thought. So this kind of non-realized ideas, but how did they come into living? So I would switch here instead of migration to politics and tell you shortly why we came into politics and engage in being angry with politics. So this here is, I don't know whether you're into Fußball, Hertha BSC Berlin, so soccer, and so that was a very good football team. And this is their former Vereinsheim, though the core of this place. And they started a hotel in the 80s, so it's the same stories you could say. Somebody started something. The ground was owned by the city of Berlin, and they were publishing a competition on a new art hall, but only temporary art hall for 3 months, for summer, shortly before the election, because Wobereit wanted to please the kind of cultural producers in Berlin. And then we found out that this ground is perfect. They have like 1,000 square meter, 3 meters 75 high. They have a huge, let's say, terrace you could use for a lot of things. They have a house with 500 square meters. They have 1,600 square meters with a really huge high as it's art hall. It's all existing, and then they sold it, the same thing that we did, like the ground minus the removal costs of the whole structure, and it was nearly nothing. And then I asked myself, why did they sell it? If the city is looking for a possibility for an art hall and they don't have money for it, so they ask for temporary construction. And on the other hand, they are owners of the structure which could easily fulfill the requirements for this kind of art hall, which is not like fancy old stuff. Then we asked, and it was some weeks before the elections, and we asked all the political leaders, the elections for the state of Berlin. It's not only a city, it's also the state of Berlin, so it's a city-state. So this is Wobereit at that time, you might know the claim, poor but sexy, and we wrote to him. Would you change the buying off of public-owned, city-owned real estate? Because they were selling off everything to have some money in because they were poor. And somebody wrote back, yeah, we would like, maybe one day we have to consider that this practice could be. So we asked the other parties, the conservatives, same thing. We have the liberals, they were quite clear, we want to keep on with that. We shouldn't have public property, we should have all in private hand. Then we asked the real red one, the Die Linke. They said, well, maybe we could think about, and then I thought, that's strange, we are living in a representative democracy, but who is representing my interest of not selling out public property? So I can't vote for a party that's representing my aim that public property shouldn't be sold out. So that if there is no difference, a kind of anti-differentiation in a political system, so we made, that's their colors, black, red, and we just mixed it because there is no difference anymore. It became a color, which is in Germany also a kind of, you could also read it in, let's say, various ways. And we provided this as a background as a screensaver, for handies, and it made a whole campaign though, and then it's coming to campaigning, though it's not us, it's like hundreds of people involved afterwards, artists and whatever, founding like Stadt Neudenken, which is one of the NGOs that was founded by that, the Round Table for Real Estate Policy, and we got money from the state of Berlin for exhibition, and we used it to print these papers, these posters, and we provided some glue, and it was 4 weeks before the elections. People took it. we were offering to take it for free and to glue it over. We were writing newspapers, glue it over when you find any advertisement for a political party where we would think there is no real content. I can't decide. And it happened. And just as a result, just to say, maybe we started something, but in the end we have maybe 0.5% of, or even less, of the energy put into that campaign. And now this Liegenschaftsfonds, or the real estate fund of Berlin, is stopped, and they stopped selling out public property. Now they discovered they have to have it for, they have to do some new housing and even like cheap housing, and where should they do it if they don't have still ground? They need new schools because Berlin is growing. Where should they have the schools if it's not on public ground? And kindergartens and so on. So that was a time that after campaigning against, for sure we had some trials as well at court, because if you damage an official poster of a party, the damage is €2 something. If you calculate higher, they want to include it and they rented it, it's maybe €12. So we said, okay, you can give us court cases for every, but only on €12. And you can open thousands of court cases, but only on €12 maximum. So and then that stopped. So that is also like entering this field of, let's say, legality, half legality, and for sure after that we published and you become an advisor for the Senator of Urban Planning, who luckily now became the head of Berlin, Müller. And maybe we read this quote. This is a publication we did together, and we spent quite a long time on that. That's a quote by a former mayor of Berlin. In the time when squatting was really active, like the first real huge squatting scene, where the whole, let's say, West Berlin as an island, let's say, left-wing activism is based on. And he became mayor only for some weeks, and in his declaration speech, he said, if we had a land law that treated land not as an unlimited commodity, but as a basic need like water and bread, then crucial factors that trigger the latent propensity for violence would be eliminated. So just saying the private ownership of ground with all what's coming with it is part of the violence caused in these fights between squatting scene and police. And he's told the police, well, it's illegal to squat empty houses, but why should the state send the police? Where is this automatic thinking? And that's for a new elected mayor. No, he came in without being elected, but quite advanced. And if you will follow him, Hans-Jochen Vogel, he's really into a kind of alternative property model, even on a state level. So that's referring back to Friedman and Constant. So, and Florian was coming up as we saw we should provide politicians with a kind of narrative. Because I give you one example. They wanted the center of Berlin, where the TV tower is, Alexanderplatz, is quite empty, as you might know. No, it's little vast, but it's empty. So, but still, everybody could go there. And now they wanted to rebuild it in a kind of historic way, and to make it private plots again, like going back to the private ownership. And he asked me when he was still a senator for urban planning. He asked me what could be an argument within my own party. I need something which is in 3 seconds, something in 3 minutes, and half an hour. I said, okay. So the first, the 3 second was the center is for everybody. The Mitte is für alle da. So the center, the middle, the point is for everybody, because we have the same tendency in Berlin that it's becoming quite golden middle with. So and we thought we should provide a kind of narrative that's always going back to history and avoiding this kind of either or thinking. It's either private or public, this what could be called the dialectic principle as well, that you have like a thesis, the antithesis, so the either or, and then something new is coming out, but you always lose both sides. So Florian came up with this Edgar Morin, a French philosopher. He will tell you more about him. who said, no, maybe we should have a dialogic principle instead, that both A and B, like even if it's like controversial points, can coexist in a kind of new and, not an either or, but an and. So this is a publication we did, I just leave it in German. So it's always this oppositional positions that you can think in either or in a as well. And I give you one example, how we go back to history. Because if you start a new narrative like Constant did and or the others, it might take a long time if you can't trace it back to a kind of history of the place you are talking about. So this is Berlin, very early ages. It's Cologne and Berlin, two cities. One city was earning the money, the other one was banning it, and on and on, and one was more Slavic, and the other population came from a different part. So all the different migration backgrounds. But what they did one day, they built a bridge, and on the bridge, in this little island, they built a new Rathaus, so a new town hall. So that means if you are still the one side, still the other side, but you can think it all together. So this double Berlin, you have it in East and West Berlin, you have it also like in the 20s when all the little bigger villages like Charlottenburg was implemented in Berlin, led to a kind of very polycentric image, which we would wanted to provide. Another thing is, when we're coming more into politics and legal aspects, this is the outline of the state of Berlin. All what's black is protected. It's either nature protection, historical protection, whatever protection. So if you would put them all together, all these chiefs of let's say, protection, state-paid, state-organized protection groups, if they would work together, they would quite be strong enough to be influential on what's going on, even beyond private ownership. No, because they have certain laws to work against the economic self-organizing maximum profits strategies that for sure in a private hand is normal. Here we are going back to the two towers. The two towers are here. This is the Dongchuan Center. This is called Herzbergstraße. Here you see like some old buildings they were built 1910, typical like housing. So what's happening now? All this now, following the 50s, 60s thinking of separation of working and living. So remember again, Constant, and so we had this functional division because one was dirty and one was, and leisure time should be like 3 different zones. Here this is an industrial zone. So you are not allowed to live there. No culture is allowed. No sports is allowed. But these Vietnamese people would like to live there. So now you have the moment that you have empty houses, because if after 10 years of not using them, the right to use them as housing is gone, but you can't use them for something else because all the structure inside is small rooms, so you can't use it for trading. So then I thought that's something, so we should rethink this kind of division of uses, but how can we deal with it? So that's also part of this dialogic city concept. And the last example, can't we go into making laws? So if you also always fight against laws, energy laws, whatever, that it's not allowed to live there, can't we do own laws? Is maybe design can be something that's much more on that level than on the difference we can make on a building like that. For sure, it makes a difference that here's a neon and not bulbs, and also the wallpaper on the roof makes a difference. But does it really make a difference in a quarter? Maybe not. So even a building, does it make a difference 500 meters away if you make a better or worse building like Bundesstraße? It doesn't make a difference. So can we go into lawmaking? So this is one we suggested, and we will see the next elections, which is in 3 weeks. So we just said, the norm, if you have a maximum height in the city, everybody would like to add the maximum height by building codes and whatever. Everybody as a private owner would like to add a penthouse. Well, it's normal. Penthouse is the most expensive part. So everybody who is searching for a cheap apartment would like to have social housing there. So normally it would be either or situation. So we just suggested, okay, make it both. Give them one level more with the only condition that he has to rent out the lifetime of the building, the lifetime of the penthouse. He has to rent out one floor for a social price. So for sure it will be first or second floor, but who cares? No, and this kind of heterogeneity that would be provided just by changing one law would be enormous. Yeah, and all the neighbors are influenced because there is one floor more, okay. But the problem now is that the property rights are much stronger than the social rights. So you cannot, it's really difficult to anchor in wherever you can anchor in the Grundbuch, so in the legal papers of the building, where should you anchor for a lifetime of a penthouse that he has to provide the same amount of service for a social rent price. The other thing is, now we went on to ask real estate managers whether private owners would follow the suggestion. And it's more like 65% would say, yeah, for sure. First floor I get 12 euro, okay, I have a minus of 6, but for the penthouse I get 20. So where's the problem? So now this is part of, let's say, entering the legal sector, the legislation sector of Berlin, to give the new senator of urban planning more rights, because they have 3 advocates in their whole. They have 600 people working there, but they only have 3 advocates. So 3 lawyers, but they need really specialized lawyers to come to implement that. I think. Shall I? Okay. So going back to history then. In 1685, the Edict of Nantes that allowed a special religious minority to stay there was stopped, which meant that 20,000 French guys had to leave the country. So we had French refugees, and Friedrich der Große, 11 days after this Edict of Nantes was declared to be no longer valuable, offered that all the 20,000 Hugenotten, the French guys, are allowed to come. And now we can think, why did he do that? Because there was a long war, not really 30 years, but there was a long war before. So he was just needing people. And they were very good skilled, mainly handcrafts. So he actively brought them into, it was close to Potsdam, which is now today called Babelsberg, and they had their own system of judging within their community. They had special rights that they are allowed to work. They were not allowed directly to be in a kind of bad relationship to other production, but they had certain rights that were beyond the existing legal system that was provided at that time. So this arrival pity is not something that somebody is arriving and then we think about the arrival pity. It was an active moment. So therefore we use that as one example in the history, rethink the kind of...
And they got a symbolic space in the heart of the city.
Yeah. And it's... Yeah. And they were speaking French, and the aristocracy in that time also spoke French, though they were very quickly very close, and a lot of other which comes in. So this is the image of Tempelhof Airport from which is looking more or less the same now, but this is from 1954. So we had like 8 to 10 million refugees, fair enough, from east parts of, let's say, there were 10 to 12 million refugees.
Internally displaced.
Yeah, internally displaced. Clearly enough, they will never go back. 10 to 12, now we have not even half of it. So what are we talking about? So this is also a suggestion we made for Tempelhof, because there was, now we have you have a system of representative democracy. On the other hand, you have direct democracy, like in Switzerland. Now, this element of direct democracy, like referendums, is getting stronger in Germany. And the Senate of Berlin wanted to build in Tempelhof because it's a huge area and it's quite unused. It's a park. The park is 3 times bigger than Tiergarten, which was the biggest park till then. And so there was a referendum. It was also fair enough because it was a completely stupid scheme and top down. But they said, no, you are not allowed on Tempelhofer Feld, but you would be allowed to build the 3,000 apartments that were asked. You would be allowed to build it just on top of Tempelhof. I think also to have a Nazi building like Tempelhof and reactivate it with housing and could be interesting. And the image is not something that we designed. We just took it from the Bikini House, you might know. It is in the former West, where one floor was missing. That was called Bikini House. And with that, that's also with the listed authority, we discussed it. That would be fine, no? We just don't have to touch the listed Nazi building. And then we thought, okay, how can we, there is something going strange in this kind of relation between design and on the other hand there is the legal world, the political world. So we made the first conference, Florian also involved. We call it legislating architecture, also we did a design studio with Harvard and started this as a kind of academic topic. It was rather difficult, I have to say. We went on, this is a kind of research we did for ETH, for the exhibition, also some teaching there, going into the referendum system, like just making, going through all the referendums they had since the opera was burning, 81, but just to say, what do they decide on an urban level? So really, they decide on every Raumplanungsgesetz is like how would you translate Raumplanungsgesetz? Like, did you hear it? They decide on how high, how low rents should be for housing. They also decide that no minarets should be built, and with that. But in the end, it's a kind of very interesting topic. So we asked the first-year students of Christian Karras, and we did a 3 weeks workshop with them. They shouldn't design a house, they should design a referendum. Yeah, a referendum. You can make a referendum, no rent should be higher than 10 euro, or whatever they like. Or you shouldn't, everybody should have 20 square meters, but not more. So they designed properly, okay, and then we said, okay, now you have to start campaigning after 1 week. Half of the group is against and half it for it, because it's also about campaigning this topic. And we did it together with a filmmaker, Christopher Roth. He was filming and it was a website. And then from these 230 students, 50 students complained at the president of ETH, why do we have to be political? This is, the Swiss is non-political, we are independent, and if this is coming out that we are either for or against in a kind of video that might be published in wherever, then our career later on might be damaged. And Switzerland is not political.
There's one for me.
That was a really interesting case. So I had a phone with the president, and I said, dear Mr. President, is this kind of neutrality, is it political or not? And he said, yeah, for sure, neutrality is highly political, for sure. And please keep on. But don't tell them that I said keep on, just do something for their parents and that they feel better. But just to show how difficult it is to enter these topics, either it's about activism, but that's legal instruments. If the ETH, the students, would form a referendum on the city level, I'm not so sure that they can't be successful. No? Because they just have to make the majority. Even if it's just 20 people coming for voting. It's normally it's more, and they have a very balanced system, and what's that just so they do to implement that in a kind of academic system of architecture is very necessary. That's the next publication, Legislating Architecture. I have it with me, you can all order it. It's in English, it's at Arch Plus, so better you read it. And it's about England, it's about Italy, because they have very different systems of how they deal with property rights, how they deal with legislating. For example, you might know, do we have Italians here?
Yeah.
La sanatoria. So what's the sanatoria? So every 10 years you have some legal acts. Now you will have the next one, I think it was 2 weeks ago. They do a kind of, you fact the system by building without building rights. But every 10 years there's something you can pay off. You pay like money to the state and then it becomes legal. It's called sanatoria. The big ones were in the 80s, I have to say. Now it's like getting smaller and smaller. For sure, you had one only for Sardinia because the villa of Berlusconi was not fulfilling. And then for Sardinia there was a sanatoria. You pay off. England has some specialities because the right system there is completely different and on. And we did, for example, we have made an interview with Andreas Geisel, who's now the Senator of Urban Planning, after the old one became mayor. And he is clearly saying that if a situation like Dongshan Center, the reality differs so much from the legal status that no restaurants are allowed, no living is allowed, and it differs so much, then maybe right is not the right measurement for the situation. And that for a senator of Berlin. So this will become part of, and there is some changes going on that we can call it now urban areas that allow housing and high density and production in a certain way. And this is becoming very interesting. So if we can implement a change here, I'm sure it's more influential for the city of Berlin than 500 buildings I could realize in Berlin. So that's the last thing I will show. Do we have, is it loud? Yeah.
Warum waren Sie von der Legislativen auf der Ebene, wo es sozusagen auch kleinteiliger wird, kein Gebrauch? Also wenn ich jetzt die Möglichkeit hätte, Gesetze zu machen, ich will mich überhaupt nicht beschweren, weil ich bin voller Tatendrang, diese Stadt zu gestalten. Aber ich sage Ihnen einfach, dass Personalkapazitäten im Moment begrenzt sind.
Natürlich ist so wie der Gesetzestext, das Buch der Bücher, oder? Und auch wenn du nicht jetzt kannst oder willst, oder? Und keine Zeit dazu hast als Architekt, denken, es musst du einfach lesen und verstehen.
Warum können wir nicht das Verhältnis umdrehen? Also warum können wir nicht als Architektur das geschaffen, dass wir die Texte einmal durchschreiben?
So this was a trailer for a film. We have a 30-minute version now on the Bayern. You might have seen in the main pavilion, the Italian one, or you will go there. And why I showed it is, we have to communicate more fancy. No, this trailer I couldn't do it myself. I think none of the architecture students till now could do it because you don't have the training. You learn how to draw properly Swiss size, Swiss. but you don't know how to communicate in all these fields that are open now. And I think if you want to communicate and not, let's say, nearly at your desk as the 93-year-old freedman who was happy that he could sell his oeuvre to the States because he was really broken. That's also part of, so if we talk about economy. And maybe it's better to publish in other fields than in non-sold books or books that are only read within your own profession, and so on and so on. So we did this as a trailer to convince Aravena that we would just want to show a film. And now we will found a film department, this filmmaker for architects, which is one of the new projects, to communicate.